we hold these truths to be self-evident: that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Rhode Island PBS is proud to present Bristol's 4th of July, a celebration of history and independence. Bristol, Rhode Island is a quaint old New England town, a small peninsula with Narragansett Bay on its west and Mount Hope Bay on its east. Founded in 1680, this coastal town with abounding beauty and history is nationally known for hosting the oldest continuous Independence Day celebration in the United States, and as a result is known as America's most patriotic town. At the present time, the celebration officially starts on Flag Day, June 14th, with a special gathering at the town common depicting celebrations of the past. Numerous events follow. These events and many more all lead up to the 4th of July parade. That's when Bristol's population of 24,000 shares their little town with as many as 200,000 visitors.
The celebration has grown immensely since I was a child. I remember when I was growing up in the 60s, the celebration started approximately July 1st and ended July 4th.
When the celebration first started, there was only 3 fundraising events. There was the card party that all women were involved. We used to have a tag day, and then of course it was the grand ball, which was held up at the Bristol Armory. All that's changed now.
Now the celebration starts on Flag Day, and we even squeeze in a few events before Flag Day because there's just 24 hours in a day.
Although today's celebration may be much larger than what the founding organizers could have ever imagined, the tradition continues with their core principles in place.
The oldest event in this celebration is the Patriotic Exercises. Back in 1785, that was the 4th of July celebration. And that event still continues to this day. On the morning of the 4th of July, we gather. The parade, of course, came later. Most people think that the parade started in 1785, but it didn't. It came many years later.
The first such observance was conducted in 1785 at the First Congregational Church. The Reverend Henry White, the original organizer of the celebration, led the town in prayers of thanksgiving. In the 1950s, the exercises moved to the Colt Memorial School, where the proud tradition continues.
This Independence Day,
in fact, Bristol's annual celebration of America's birthday depicts the town's first observances of patriotic exercises with organized proclamations of patriotic pride and thanksgiving through prayer,
amen.
speech-making,
Never in my life, I repeat, never in my life have I ever been more proud to be a Bristolian.
music, and song.
Please join in.
Although these ceremonies have increased in content over the years, Bristol's tradition of celebrating patriotic exercises has changed little since the first speech was delivered. The patriotic speaker is still considered to be a position of honor, second only to that of the parade chief marshal. Bristol's hometown journalist Manny Coria, who is the 2007 parade chief marshal, was the patriotic speaker in 1991.
It is indeed an honor and privilege for me to be standing here before you today on this glorious Independence Day. When I was first asked to be the 1991 Patriotic Exercise Speaker, immediately I thought how wonderful it was that the 4th of July Committee offered me an opportunity to deliver this year's patriotic address. 4th of July in Bristol has been as much an intricate part of my life as any other single major event. Many of this town's most renowned and respected citizens, such as the Reverend Dr. Henry White, LeBaron V. Colt, and the Honorable Orrin F. Bosworth, have walked up to this podium or one similar to it to reveal their personal patriotic thoughts and innermost feelings in a similar manner. And it is especially gratifying for me to deliver this year's speech on these historic steps directly in front of Colt Memorial School, the place from which I graduated nearly 30 years ago.
In 2007, Manny Coria returned to the steps of the Colt Memorial School with the top honor.
It's so wonderful to know now that I'm going to be mentioned in the same breath with some of the other great chief marshals of the past, like Caesar Brito and his brother Matt Brito, and even going back even further than that, an idol of mine as a kid growing up, George R. Depp Fish, who was the founder of Drum and Bugle Corps in the United States. When I was young and went up to the corner of Union and High to watch the parade, of course, I saw the police cruisers get ready and come by with the sirens. My eye immediately went to the Chief Marshal's division. When I was young, I remember distinctly Chief Marshals like Matt Brito, who would always ride in the parade on a golden palomino, complete with a large Texas-style hat. It was a sight that was incomparable. Later on, about 12 years later, his brother, Caesar Brito, came down the street, and but that time I was working for the local Bristol Phoenix newspaper. So I had a chance to not only watch the parade, but cover it. And I said, when I saw Caesar Brito, complete in white suit, Panama hat, white shoes, with a cane. Again, you look at guys, icons like this in Bristol's community, and you can't help but say to yourself, gee, could I grow up to be someone like that in this town?
Caesar Brito was a very interesting individual. He came to this country in a sailing ship. He worked in the mills down by the water, shoveling coal, didn't take many vacations. He was the true American dream. During the time that he was the Chief Marshal, it was one of the high points of the family. His brother Matt had been the Chief Marshal before him, and it was quite an occurrence. We had the reception, matter of fact, at his house, and it was one of the most memorable times I can ever have in my mind. I remember his white linen suit and marching in the parade, and it was quite a time for a man who came to this country not being able to speak the language, about 7 or 8 years old, and then ending up at the Chief Marshal and having a reception at his estate was pretty nice. My father, Joe Brito Sr., was Chief Marshal in the early 80s. So we've had 3 generations. My Uncle Matt back between the 50s and 60s, my grandfather between the 70s, and my dad in the 80s. So it's been quite a tradition.
The Brito tradition continued in 2011 when Joe Brito Jr. and his wife Betty were named Chief Marshals.
To me, this experience is one thing that we all get. We get this. It's the 4th of July in Bristol. It's unique, it's awesome, it's wonderful. And it is what America really is. And I think that Bristol sets the standard high.
Very humbling experience. I sincerely mean that. Being part of the fabric in Bristol, and those who remember my Uncle Matt, my grandfather, my dad, all being Chief Marshals and participating in this town and giving what they could give to try to make this a better place for all of us, I always remembered. There's not much in my life that'll ever top this experience.
Meanwhile, Joe Brito Jr. was thrilled to share the honor with his wife.
You go through a range of emotions when you're standing up there and you finally are accepted by the 4th of July committee to be the Chief Marshals together. And to do this with my wife by my side, that's been my partner for 29 years, and we've done a lot of fun things together. This is just ecstatic.
One of the reasons why the town fathers decided to appoint a chief marshal was to establish some order to the growing number of celebrating Bristolians. The first chief marshal on record, Colonel Giles Luther, who built this house on Hope Street, held the honor in 1826. Since then, many prominent citizens have led the parade. Although women have either been named Chief Marshal or have shared the title in recent years, it wasn't until 1957 that a woman was actually chosen.
Well, when my aunt was chosen Chief Marshal, of course, she was the first woman who had ever been chosen, and that in itself was a bolt out of the blue. And the whole family was excited, and everybody was excited, and there was a lot of new ground to be broken, but it was much looser in her day. I think at first she couldn't believe it. I mean, she'd been active in 4th of July, she'd been active in Bristol, she was born in the town, taught school in the town, was very active from day one, started a high school band, the Bristol High School Band, it was the Cope Memorial High School Band, and she just was into everything. And yet the fact that she was a female, you know, no one expected it. It really, really was a surprise. And then they didn't have another one for 29 years.
In 1986, Joan followed in her aunt's footsteps and became the second woman to ever lead the parade.
The first thing I thought of was my aunt. And the first thing I thought of, she died 2 years before. And I thought, Lord, if she could have lived to have seen this, how thrilled she would have been. Really thrilled she would have been. And of course, it was just wonderful to think that people think that much of you. You know, you're not always aware of that. It was the fact that there had been no other woman since my aunt, and that they had asked me, and it was just, I don't think I could swallow it all at once. I don't think I could process it all at once.
The Chief Marshal's announcement is made in April, and it's one of the most anticipated events of the year.
As far as I know, it's supposed to be the biggest kept secret in town.
Historically, one of the big things in Bristol is kept secret, and it is kept secret quite well. And people start the first part of May trying to guess who it may be, and they know who the general chairman is, and they try to figure out who his best friends are, who he associates with, and then they start the rumor, I think it's this one. And then go to the general chairman, of course, he'll say, I have no slightest idea who it is. And sometimes he doesn't have the slightest idea who it is either at that time.
Town Council records of 1815 note that the official committee of arrangements was appointed. Today, the planners of the celebration are known as the Bristol 4th of July Committee. And over the years, the celebration has evolved into what it is today because of their hard work and dedication. This group volunteers their time all year long to pull the celebration together.
The purpose of the 4th of July Committee is to organize the celebration that starts on Flag Day and continues on through July 4th. It's been going on since 1785, has a long-standing tradition, and we put this thing together each year. We're a group of about 85 volunteers who have full-time jobs and full-time families, but somehow we've managed to squeeze in organizing these events in our spare time.
Mr. John Partington joined the committee in 1956 and served for 55 years.
I joined the committee when I was asked to, principally because I'm very involved in the military. I was interested in principally serving on the committee in the capacity of somewhere associated with the military. And because I'm a World War II veteran, and I love the military. At one time it was a lot more military than it is today. Sticking strictly to protocol, and I believe in protocol to the utmost, we had divisions which were designated as military. We had at one time, I remember very distinctly, 15 different distinct divisions, as opposed to now when they have 5.
Mr. Partington proudly served as general chairman in 1970 and 71, but his proudest moment came in 1998 when he was chosen to be Chief Marshal.
It meant that I had reached the top of the ladder as far as what I could do and what I could be. And I always had aspirations, even as a child, seeing the different chief marshals, who they were. And I would say to myself, someday I'd like to have that honor. And eventually, by waiting, it finally came to me. And I was appointed by Richard Lewis. He was the general chairman at the time.
2008 was another milestone for the Partington family. Judy Squires, Mr. Partington's daughter, was named parade chairman, following in her father's footsteps.
He's probably the best dad in the whole world and probably the most patriotic, and he's a World War II veteran, and he loves the 4th of July. And I think probably the best compliment that I could have at the end of all of this, in my capacity as parade chairman, because he was a parade chairman many years ago, is for people to say that you're just like your dad.
In fact, 3 generations of Partingtons served on the committee in 2008. That's when Judy's daughter Heidi officially got involved.
I'm really excited. I've always helped out with the events since I was little, so now it's more official.
Heidi is no stranger to the celebration. She was crowned Miss 4th of July in 2000.
I've been wanting to be Miss 4th of July my entire life, and now I just can't believe it.
Like Mr. Partington, Frank Mezzarandino was an active member of the committee and was responsible for many of the events included in the celebration to this day.
My husband was chairman in 1956, 57, and 58. He is the only one who had the chairmanship for 3 years. And while he was in, he did put his whole heart, his whole life was 4th of July. He was the first on many things, like, of course, he's notorious for having started the ball. But there are other firsts. He was the first one to pick a female chief marshal, which was Teresa Donovan. After that, that caught on. He was the first one, through the efforts of Pip Maizano and Senator Pastore, to get the original, not the substitute, the original Clydesdale horses. They were magnificent when they came. He was the first one to get the Philadelphia Mummers, the original string of mummers. They were so picturesque, the crowd went wild. When the ball was his original idea. He didn't pay for a place. We used to use the armory. Open up that back door, you had all the air conditioning you wanted in those days. We always invited some well-known dignitary, a lot of them in politics, including Senator and Mrs. Pell. And I had the pleasure of dancing with the senator. He was not a very good dancer at the time. He asked me to help him. But Noella enjoyed, my husband was a good dancer, having won some grand waltzes, prizes for waltzing. And so she enjoyed it. The ball was a huge success. We didn't have any trouble selling tickets, and we didn't make much money on it, but then people started bringing little foods to pick on, and that's how the food situation got started. But the ball per se was a success, and that was Frank's original idea. The soapbox derby was his own preconceived idea. He thought we should have it. So we went to a couple of them to see how they operated. And so he did that, is still in existence now.
Go!
Manny Pasquale is a veteran committee member and has worn many hats over the years.
I've been involved with the 4th of July Committee since 1970. So I've been involved for 38 years with the 4th of July Committee, and I was the general chairman in 1984 and 85. I was the parade chairman in 82 and 83, and I was the bicentennial chairman in 1980 for the town.
The Bristol 4th of July Committee and Judy Squires made history again when she became the celebration's general chairman, just like her dad did many years before.
We're kidding not too long ago that our bloodstream has red, white, and blue running through it because it's been part of our family from day one. I'm really glad that I took on the chairmanship of the 4th of July celebration last year when my mom and dad were still here to enjoy it with me, and it was a dream of my father's to have me as chairman of the 4th of July celebration. He was chairman back in 1970-71, and he was a past chief marshal. And they were so proud last year coming to all of the events and participating in the festivities with me and my family. And I know they're with me in spirit and looking down on this and still as proud as they were last year.
The Miss Fourth and Little Miss 4th of July pageant plays a significant role in the festivities. That's when two special young ladies are chosen to represent the town at all of the celebratory events.
Basically how it works is the big girls up between the ages of 16 and 20, they must be residents of Bristol for at least a year. They have to be either a high school student or a college student in good standing in order to enter, and we basically take the first 15 applicants that are qualified with those qualifications.
In 1948, Evelyn Lemaire was the first to wear the crown.
Well, there were 5 or 6 of us, and there was nothing like the Miss America thing with bathing suits and things. It was a gown. There was like a bandstand set up at the, I would say, the southwest corner of the Common. And you know, every 4th of July we have a warship of some sort in the harbor, and the commander or whatever he was of that ship was the one who placed the in those days not a tiara but a floral wreath on the winner's head. We had a large flatbed truck with chairs on it at that time.
On July 3rd there was a ball held, and at that ball there were judges who I believe were sailors who would ask all of the contestants questions, and there were about 9 contestants in all. The next day, on July 4th, we lined up here in front of where I am right now, the school, which used to be the Colt Memorial High School, and there were about 9, like I say. We all had numbers, and the one number was chosen, and I was lucky enough to have been that number, and we were crowned. I believe the crown wasn't the one we actually wore at the parade. It was a larger size crown, and of course it was a complete surprise to everyone, particularly me and my family. We then got ready to be in the parade, and then we would then head out to the float. The float was a lot plainer than it is today. There weren't many flowers or decorations on that float. Miss 4th of July sat, and then at the end of the parade, like I say, that was it. Whereas today, Miss 4th of July has a lot more obligation.
The pageant has really changed since 1960. It's now a full-blown production held weeks in advance.
Number 5, Ashley Ann Oliveira.
The Little Miss 4th competition was added in 1997, and Ashley Ann Oliveira was the first Little Miss to be crowned.
Being the first Little Miss was an amazing experience because it was something that every little kid, I think, in Bristol, when you're a little girl, when you see them in the parade, that's what you want to do. Personally, it was an amazing thing for me because it was something I was really determined to do. Even like at 8 years old, that was something I had my mind set on, to get that crown.
In other pageant history, Lorraine Alfred was crowned Miss 4th of July in 1963. Her daughter Renee was Miss 4th of July in 1987. As a result, they became the first mother and daughter to share the title. In 1999, Cassandra Lynn Gersha was crowned Little Miss 4th and shared her reasons for winning.
Because I really tried, and I found a lucky penny in the parking lot.
Cassandra's luck continued in 2011 when she became the first former Little Miss 4th to also become Miss 4th of July.
I'm so excited. This is really just rewarding, especially being Little Miss and the first person to be Miss 4th too. I'm really excited. It's going to be a great summer.
Flag Day takes on a special meaning in the town of Bristol.
Thank you for joining us to the official start of the Bristol's 4th of July festivities on Flag Day.
Not just because it's the official kickoff of the celebration, but because it's a time to reflect on the true meaning of American freedom.
We're kind of proud of that ragged old flag.
Each year, local students proudly participate.
This country has been through tough times as wars have gone and passed, but this great nation was built to last.
You know, I think we've got to teach the kids very much the why of 4th of July. Why do we celebrate it? What does it mean?
The 4th of July means to me like freedom I never felt before.
Children are being taught the history here. After all, the town is counting on them to carry on the tradition.
I love the 4th of July.
Year after year, the young and the old gather on Flag Day to honor their flag and their country with the same patriotic spirit that the celebration was founded on. The exact origin of the Bristol 4th of July parade is not quite certain. Historians say it probably started out as a procession as people walked to the Congregational Church to participate in the patriotic exercises. Neighbors and families met at various places in town and proceeded to the church. Eventually, these groups became more organized and formed a general procession, later adding musical accompaniment. The parade continued to get bigger and more sophisticated with each passing decade.
Unlike in years past, now we have one person that's in charge of the parade. My responsibility is to send out all the invitations made in the parade. We have veterans, militia, town officials, state officials, Chief Marshal. My responsibility is to gather all that information, put the parade together along with the help of, we have float chairman, we also have a band chairman. They get the bands, they put together the floats, we all get together, go through the parade orders and make sure that everything works.
There's a wonderful letter in this house from Thomas Jefferson up on the second floor, written to Professor John DeWolf in 1821. John DeWolf is a professor of biology and chemistry at Brown University, and he was chosen to be the patriotic speaker, and he invited Thomas Jefferson, come to Bristol for 4th of July, like we've been doing for centuries. And Jefferson was old and couldn't come. Way back in 1821, when Thomas Jefferson wrote the letter, he expresses in the letter his concern that people were losing sight of what July 4th meant. And, you know, here we are, almost 200 years later, and worried even more so that people are losing sight of it, and how proud he was of Professor John DeWolf because he'd been there for the red, white, and blue and democracy and all the rest of it. But he was concerned in 1821.
There's no doubt that the patriotic spirit is alive and well in Bristol, Rhode Island. This celebration is grounded in its roots. Bristol's founding fathers would be more than satisfied.
Oh, I think John Adams would be thrilled because he prophesied that this was a day, although he said July 2nd, but that's immaterial, that it was a day that we should celebrate, he said, with parades and with cannons and with bells ringing. I think he'd be thrilled to death at what we're doing. I really do.
Bristol, Rhode Island's 4th of July celebration is a proud tradition that started in 1785 and a proud tradition that continues today.
We hope you enjoyed Bristol's 4th of July, a celebration of history and independence.
Be sure to thank those in the military, both veterans and active duty, for defending our freedom.
On behalf of all of us at Cardi's Furniture Superstores, we wish you a safe 4th of July.